Hi, my name is Martin Kenny. I'm a student of syncretism, which is the science of harmonizing the different teachings, cultures, natural sciences, religions, and philosophies from current schools of thought as well as from the ancient mystery schools. Over the last couple of years, I've dedicated my life to trying to piece together the workings and mysteries of our collective reality. Where are we? What are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? The fundamental idea behind syncretism is that the answers to these questions do not belong to any one culture, race, religion, or book, but in fact encoded across the full spectrum of our collective reality within this realm. Syncretism also brings together natural physical sciences, philosophical sciences, as well as intuitive or spiritual science to discern universal truth. Over the last few years, I've been working on a model of what our universe could be from a geocentric perspective. I've used the cosmic egg model, which most ancient cultures subscribe to, and even modern heliocentric science alludes to. In this video presentation, I'm going to cover all of the above subject matter and more in great detail. But before I begin, I want to open with a stern warning to anyone about to watch this presentation. The information I'm going to share with you is very much outside the box of any boxes. I'm going to unapologetically challenge conventional thinking, belief systems, and popular consensus on many levels. If you still believe in the heliocentric globe Earth model, you are not yet ready for this information. If you still subscribe to any dogmatic, cultural, or religious belief systems, you are not yet ready for this information. If you're not an independent, free-thinking, free-spirit, open-minded individual, then this is not for you. If you're afraid to explore and ask big questions outside your box or comfort zone, then this is definitely not for you. Having said that, I don't expect to be 100% correct about everything I share, and I don't expect you to blindly believe what I share. I'm not here to preach or sell anything. I simply hope that you listen to my presentation, information, and research with an open mind and critical eye. Take what resonates and ignore what doesn't. My geocentric cosmic egg model is based on the idea that our entire universe is inside an electromagnetic torus field, hence the term cosmic egg universe. My research suggests that our geocentric Earth sits inside, diametrically across the middle of this electromagnetic universe. I also suggest that our geocentric Earth is much larger and expansive than conventionally believed, with other extraterrestrial lands, dimensions, civilizations, solar and ecosystems yet to be rediscovered within and across the plane of our Earth. It is also my understanding that there is absolute divine order and structure to all creation and existence in our universe and beyond. There is no doubt in my mind that there are universal cosmic, conscious, and solar cycles and seasons dictated by various celestial and solar energies, namely electromagnetism, sound resonance, and energy frequency. Now, I'm going to open this presentation with a very powerful quote made in 1901 by a famous French philosopher named Henri Bergson. Open quote. "Fortunately, some are born with spiritual immune systems that sooner or later give rejection to the illusory worldview grafted upon them from birth through social conditioning. They begin sensing that something is amiss and start looking for answers. Inner knowledge and anomalous outer experiences show them a side of reality others are oblivious to, and so begins their journey of awakening. Each step of the journey is made by following the heart instead of following the crowd, and by choosing knowledge over the veils of ignorance." Close quote. Now, Although this was written 117 years ago, I think it's safe to say this is still very relevant today, perhaps even more so. I think it's also safe to say those of us doubting the reality we have been programmed to accept since birth are living proof of what Bergson was describing all those years ago. We are here in the 21st century asking big and difficult questions that most people are not even aware of or too afraid to ask. Our spiritual immune systems have awoken to the illusory world view that was grafted upon us from birth. Now, just like Mr. Bergson described, for 32 years of my life, I conformed to all the social norms expected of me. My national, social, and cultural identity, political views, education, religion, and all other general belief systems were who I thought I was. Most of the time, I conformed to these social norms against my intuition or better judgment, usually out of fear. Fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of being ostracized, fear of not fitting in or being normal, fear of God. But despite all of the above, there was always something that didn't quite sit well with me. A deep sense of something is not right. However, at the time, without definitive proof, I felt I had no choice but to conform and follow the crowd. I did what was expected of me. I didn't lose the plot. I followed the script. I just went with the program. I didn't question whose plot or whose script or whose program I was following. I just followed. Fortunately for me, one day, without warning, I found my smoking gun. Flat Earth. Now, I won't go into the details of my Flat Earth discovery and journey, as I'm sure you have already gone through a similar journey yourselves. Needless to say, this globe-shattering Flat Earth discovery shifted the paradigm of my reality. That curious questioning child within me resurfaced, and so my quest for truth and answers began. Now, when I embarked on this quest, a few facts became apparent to me. The first one being, everything is up for questioning. Everything I thought I knew was to be re-examined, especially my cultural, religious, and educational beliefs. Needless to say, making sense of reality seemed a dauntingly impossible task, considering everything I thought I knew did not make sense anymore. Especially since we live in a world where we are constantly told what and how to think. So, where would I begin? How was I going to find the truth about anything? I quickly realized that truth has no friends or enemies. Truth has no obligation to make me feel comfortable, happy, or sad. Truth just is. I also realized that truth is quite often confused with belief. So, what's the difference? Well, belief for me is determined by one accepting something based on someone else's opinion or experience, second-hand information. And truth, however, is determined by one accepting something based on their own first-hand observations and experiences using their own faculties and senses. After all, what hope do we have if we can't trust ourselves, our faculties, common sense, logic, intuition, our own personal everyday experience of reality? Of course, mainstream science and popular consensus will often tell us to ignore our everyday observable experience of reality. They will dictate that our common senses do not always make sense, and so should not always be trusted, and sometimes even ignored. They would tell us that the logical thing to do is to accept and believe without question everything we are taught and shown by way of television, books, cultural, religious, and educational dogma, because it is what popular opinion and popular science dictates. Now, I'm not saying everything we are told and shown in religion and education is always a lie. Of course not. What I am saying is, if what I am being asked to believe does not make sense, is illogical, or does not correlate with my personal everyday experience of reality, then I should unashamedly question it. Which has led me to my next question. Where on earth do I even begin to look for truth? Truth that I can logically discern with my own senses and personal experience of the everyday reality. Well, nature, of course. Nature never lies. Water, wind, the sun and moon, trees, mountains, vegetation, the sky and stars never ever lie. It is only our interpretation of what we observe in the natural world that can be manipulated into a lie. But the reality of observable nature itself does not and cannot lie. Even Albert Einstein himself said, and I quote, "Look deep into nature and then you'll understand everything better." Close quote. Now, nowhere in the natural observable world does water stick to the outside of a rotating or spinning object. Water always seeks to find its level. I can confidently say this because it is what I logically observe with my own common senses within my everyday reality. On this one basis alone, it is impossible, I repeat, it is impossible for the Earth to be a violently spinning ball. Far more likely is the fact that we live on a level surface of some sort, a flat Earth. Now, I'm not going to go into all the arguments of trying to defend the geocentric Earth, as there are already many independent researchers, presenters, and intelligent minds doing so far better than I probably could. And in any case, I'd assume many of you have already crossed that bridge. Many of you, like me, are probably asking the next big questions beyond that. Questions like, well, if our Earth isn't a violently spinning ball hurtling through a vacuum of endless space, and outer space is likely not to be what we've been taught it is, then what is it? What shape could our Earth and universe be? How big are they? How does it all work? How did all this come about? How much of what we've been officially taught and told is truth, and how much is not true? These questions are daunting and challenging to say the least, especially considering those of us asking them are a minority with very little resources, information, or support to at least allow us to fairly investigate and argue our case. It is why I am here presenting my ideas, theories, model, and research. At this point, I want to make it very, very clear that whilst I may not be able to factually verify most of what I'm going to share with you, it's also worth considering that my argument is built on the foundation of certain irrefutable, factual, geocentric, flat earth truths. Truths associated with observable and testable geocentric science, nature, common sense, logic, and my personal everyday experience of reality. You will also notice that as I go along, a lot of my research is very broad across a varied spectrum of information. This process and method of threading and connecting the dots, like I said, is known as the science of syncretism. Once again, I will reiterate that I am not here to preach or sell anything. I simply want to present an alternative model, theory, and perspective of what our world and universe might be from a geocentric perspective, in a logical and sensible way. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't. At this point, I'm sure many of you will be asking, why associate the construct of our universe with an egg? Why cosmic egg? Now, to answer this question, I'd briefly like to explore the nature and anatomy of an egg. Yes, a normal, everyday, natural egg. Like I said earlier, nature is one of my biggest points of reference for my model and theory. I propose that perhaps, just perhaps, to fully understand the concept of cosmic creation and life within the universe, we must first explore the concept of creation and life within our natural, everyday world. Now, of course, we all know the egg is the female reproductive element responsible for creating, incubating, and giving life in our everyday natural world. Eggs generally create life. Even in humans, women produce eggs roughly every 28 days in what's known as a menstrual cycle. This egg creation process generally happens in 4 stages: the menstrual, the follicular, the ovulation, and the luteal stages. Even more interesting is the fact that the female human egg is the largest bodily cell and is made up of a nucleus at the center, surrounded by 5 concentric layers, with 4 on the inside and the 5th being the shell membrane holding everything together. These layers are added successively as the egg passes down the oviduct. Life in all eggs begins from the nucleus, the center, the heart of the egg. The egg contains within itself all the essentials for the development of life, leaving the sperm of a male, an external energy life force, the role of activating this already perfectly prepared system. Now, is it conceivable that the observable natural egg reproductive system in humans could be a mirror reflection of the cosmic egg system of our universe? Could the egg of a human contain within it the secrets of the universe, a microcosm of the macrocosm, if you like? Just as the human egg has a nucleus in its center where life begins, perhaps so too does our universe have a nucleus at its center where life began. And just as the human egg is made up of 4 inner layers and a greater outer layer, the shell, perhaps so too does our universe also have 4 concentric inner layers and a greater outer shell. Again, could the 4 phases of a woman's menstrual cycle be a mirrored reflection of our 4 times of the day, or the 4 phases of our moon, or the 4 seasons of our year? Perhaps, just like how the female human egg needs an external energy life force, sperm, in order to create life, so too does our cosmic egg universe also need an external energy life force, consciousness, spirits, or souls. Of course, many will say this is just conjecture and speculation, and that's fine. However, I must digress to my earlier statement about nature. Nature does not lie. Surely, all the secrets of our universe are encoded everywhere around us in the natural world. I am a firm believer that if we want to know or understand the construct of our entire universe, all we need to do is observe the microcosmic world around us. Water, plants, cells, bacteria, microbes, eggs, etc., etc. I think many of you will agree with me when I say modern humans, for all our so-called technological advancements, have collectively lost something. We have lost the ability to use our natural senses to discern truth, or at least make better informed decisions. No wonder our world is in such a lost and confused state. Our past ancestors certainly had a better understanding for the importance of having a syncretic, symbiotic relationship with reality and the natural world around us and beyond. They seem to have a better moral and intuitive sense of being, what we might call spirituality today. The more I syncretically study and look into ancient scriptures and mythologies, the more I begin to feel connected with the natural universe. In fact, when I really started to research this cosmic egg topic mythologically, I soon began to see a pattern emerging. I noticed that almost all the cultures I was researching described our universe and its creation in great detail. But not only that, almost all of them had a very similar story. From various African tribes to the Americas, Europe, and Asia, they all describe a creator of some kind. They also all describe our universe as being birthed from some kind of cosmic egg, what I call the electromagnetic torus field. And inside this cosmic egg, or electromagnetic torus field, our Earth sits flat and motionless on the great waters of some kind, and the heavens rotating above us. There is also a recurring theme of the Earth being vast and having many other worlds. Not forgetting, of course, the concept of a central pillar in the middle of our Earth, sometimes depicted as a tree of life or sacred mountain in a paradise land or realm, usually associated with being the cradle of humanity and life as we know it. So, with that in mind, in the next part of my presentation, we are going to explore a few creation stories from past and present cultures around the world. Before we begin, perhaps we should first ask the question, what is mythology? As far as I'm concerned, the two best descriptions I could find of what mythology is are as follows, and I quote, "Myths are a symbolic tales of the past that combine cosmogony and cosmology, which is the origin and nature of the universe. Myths may be connected to rituals and may serve to direct social action and values." The words mythology or myth come from the old Greek word mythos, which means story or word. A mythic story expresses the relationship of man to the cosmos. It is a combination of superstitious and religious truth, of primitive fears, and universal understanding. Mythic stories must be explored from divergent perspectives, from cultural, historical, psychological, creative, and modern perspective, what we might call syncretism today. And so, that is exactly how I'm going to approach this topic. Let's start with the Vedic Indian scriptures. I've started with the Vedic scriptures because they are some of the oldest scriptures in this domain of Earth. In fact, most of these scriptures still remain in the original ancient language of Sanskrit. According to the Vedic scriptures, our universe is said to be egg-shaped, known as the Brahmanda, which is derived from two words, Brahm, which means cosmos or expanding, and Anda, which means egg. It is also sometimes referred to as Hira Ngagaba, which literally means golden fetus or golden womb. In summary, the Vedic creation story goes, in the beginning there was nothing, then the primal egg was created. This cosmic egg is said to have floated around in emptiness for a while before it broke open into two halves. The one half was silver and became the earth, known as Prithvi, and the other half was golden and became the heavens, known as Dayas. The area between the two shells became the mid-region, space, known as the Bhuva. The scriptures go on to describe how the earth is in the middle or center of this cosmic egg and is known as the Bhumandala or earthly plane. This Bhumandala earthly plane is said to have various concentric rings of lands, oceans and mountains expanding across a vast expanse. And this vast earthly Bhumandala plane is said to be billions of miles across. At the center of the earthly plane is a central realm where the sacred Mount Meru is located, surrounded by four islands, Jambudvipa, Uttarakuru, Ketumala, and Bhadrasava. The sun is also symbolized in Vedic literature as a great golden egg that floats in the skies above the earth. Obviously, there are hundreds and hundreds of pages that go on to describe the creation story in much more detail if you're interested. Another popular creation story is the one told in another ancient scripture, the Hebrew and Judaic Bible. The Old Testament of the Bible opens with a magnificently confident statement, and I quote, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth by separating the waters above from the waters below." Of course, we all know the classical biblical creation story that then takes place over 6 to 7 days, so I won't repeat it. However, what is more interesting is the description of the Garden of Eden, where life is said to have begun. Just like in Vedic scriptures, the Bible describes the Garden of Eden as having a tree in the center, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The garden itself is said to be separated by 4 rivers, the Tigris, the Pishon, the Gihon, and the Euphrates. Of course, this world-central 4-island, 4-river paradise with a central pillar in the middle seems to be a recurring theme, not just in these religious texts and mythologies, but even on maps cartographed as recent as the 16th, 17th, and even 18th century. I'm sure many of you will already be familiar with some of these maps circulating on the World Wide Web of information. Next, let's cross over to the ancient Greeks. In ancient Greece, they had a religion known as Orphism. This Orphic religion was based on the idea that all life in the universe began in a silver egg, the Orphic egg. This cosmic egg is often depicted with a serpent coiled around it. The story describes how a golden-winged deity god named Phanes was hatched from this egg, and Phanes then created all the other gods in our universe. Another Greek interpretation is known as the Greek Pelasgian creation myth. Even today, there still lives a famous Pelasgian poem describing the creation of our universe. It goes as follows, and I quote, "The goddess of all things arose naked from chaos to part sea from sky, so that she could dance upon the waves. Catching the north wind on her back and rubbing it between her hands, she warms the pneuma and spontaneously generates the serpent Orpheon, who mates with her. In the form of a dove upon the waves, she lays the cosmic egg and bids Orpheon to incubate it by coiling 7 times around it until it splits into 2 and hatches all things that exist: sun, moon, planets, stars, the earth, with all its mountains and rivers, its trees, herbs, and living creatures." Close quote. So, yet again, we see the number 7. 7 wandering planets, 7 days of creation, 7 days in a week, and now the serpent that coils around the cosmic egg 7 times. Now, I'd just like to add that serpents are also a prevalent theme in ancient mythology. Of course, not literally, but on closer inspection, we realize that serpents often depict energy, and in this Greek mythological scenario, the coiled serpent is no doubt alluding to the electromagnetic torus field of our universe. I will further elaborate as we go along. It's also interesting to note that, just like the Vedic and Bible scriptures, the Greeks also describe the center of the earth, the North Pole, as the cradle of humanity. They call this place Hyperborea, which translates to, and I quote, "place beyond the north wind." This is also where we get the name Aurora Borealis from. The Aurora Borealis is the electromagnetic field or dome above the Hyperborean domain in the North Polar region at the center of the Earth. Again, we will further explore this particular topic further down. Next, let's see what the Chinese and Japanese said about our creation and cosmology. In China, there are various creation myths, most of them revolving around the cosmic egg concept, complemented by the yin and yang philosophy. But perhaps the most popular Chinese creation myth revolves around the story of Pangu. The story goes, before the world came into being, there existed only the cosmic egg that floated unchanging in the void for untold ages. This cosmic egg was perfectly balanced, yin and yang, opposites peacefully existing undisturbed within the chaos of the void. And from this egg, Pangu was born. Pangu then began to fashion the material of chaos into order, separating yin and yang into sky and earth, light and dark, up and down, etc., etc. In modern terms, we might call this the beginning of space, time, and matter. Anyway, Pangu is said to have then been aided by the four creatures who had emerged from the egg with him: the unicorn, the dragon, the phoenix, and the tortoise, which are the four elements: earth, air, wind, and water. Eventually, Pangu dies, and his various body parts become all the physical elements of our universe. However, upon Pangu's death, his breath is said to have entered everything that lives within the universe, thereby creating something known as Tien Tsun, the first cause of consciousness. Of course, this is just a summary. The story goes into far more detail for those interested. In Japan, however, the story begins with the contents of a cracked egg floating like a jellyfish through the void of the primordial waters. From the substance of this cracked egg, many gods were created, the most important two being Izanagi, the male, and Izanami, the female, similar to the Chinese yin and yang concept of duality. Together, these two split the primordial waters, and standing on the floating bridge of the heavens, they leaned down to stir the brine of the sea below them with a lance. The liquid began to curdle and formed an island beneath them. This island, according to the Japanese, is the origin of the human race. Its name was Onogorojima, the island of the congealed drop, or folded valley. Onogorojima is said to be at the center of the earth in the north polar region. The two gods, Izanagi and Izanami, who created this island of Onogorojima, are said to have come down onto it and built a central pillar in the middle of it, and from there they created all the other earthly islands and gods to inhabit their new world and universe. Once again, there's that recurring theme of a central pillar in the center of the world where life is said to have begun. Exactly like the Vedics, the Bible, and the Greeks, the Japanese also believed that their place of origin was at the center of the earth, this congealed island of Onogorojima. I'm sure you can see the similarities between the crater continent on my model with the Japanese description of Onogorojima. Next, let's cross over to Europe, beginning with the Celtics. The Celtic Druids perceived the cosmos, or universe, as a world tree, with three worlds inhabited by various gods and goddesses. The three worlds within this world tree are the middle world, the earth, the upper worlds, the heavens, and the underworlds below the earth. The middle world, earth, was said to contain 4 islands with a sacred fifth at its center. This central world symbolized the core or heart of the earth. The upper worlds beyond our realm were known as Gwynfeed, and the underworlds below the earth were known as Abred or Anween. The space or void surrounding this cosmic tree was known as Quigent, and the earthly middle world was said to be more connected to the upper worlds than to the underworld. The underworlds were said to usually be located through the sea or places that reach deep beneath the waters. Again, you can see this parallel on my model. The Celtic myth goes on to describe how, when all the realms are in harmonious balance, the three worlds connect straight down through their centers with the energy of Nuifer. Nuifer's bright energy is said to be a scepter of light that goes straight down and up through the center of the world tree, surrounding the entire cosmology of our universe. I will come back to this particular subject of Nuifer in the last section of my presentation. For now, let's move on. Still in Europe, let's visit the Norse of Scandinavia. In Norse mythology, Odin, or God, is said to have willed himself into being out from the womb or egg of the Ginnungagap. The Ginnungagap was the void that existed before him. The Norse also describe our universe as being part of a tree, yet again. Much like the Celtics, this tree is also divided into 3, Asgard being the heavens, Midgard being the earth, and Helm being the underworlds. Again, like the Celtics, the Norse believed there is a bridge of light that runs through the center of our universal tree, top to bottom, connecting all 3 worlds. This central pillar was known as the Bifrost Bridge. Another interesting observation of Norse mythology is the story of Ostara, also known as Oistra or Estre, who was the goddess of springtime, fertility, creation, rebirth, and life. Perhaps this is where our modern concept of Easter eggs comes from. Next up, not far from the Norse, we have the Finns, or Finnish people. Their story begins with a god named Vianamonen, god of the primordial emptiness. Vianamonen is said to have created the universe from the egg of an eagle. In a nutshell, Vianamonen breaks this egg into many pieces and with them creates the universe. The story goes on to describe how, and I quote, "In the old days, the lands of the peoples of the early earth was surrounded by waters, and above the land arched the mighty vault of the sky, which was held up by a cosmic tree located at the center of the world." Yet again. This central column was attached to the pole star around which the universe rotated. The pole star was also regarded as a kind of heavenly hinge known as the Not Pin. Directly below this Not Pin was said to be the lands of the living, surrounded by a stream, Tuwana Lanverta, the stream of Tuenela. This stream was regarded as the border between the living on the inside and the dead of the outside. The dead on the outside, wishing to join the living on the inside, had to cross this stream in the far north into the village of Pohjola, where the intersection of the sky and the earth was located. Now, according to the Finns, before reaching Pohjola, the dead seeking life would first need to defeat a no man's land, the land of Lintu Kotolinen, home of the birds. This is an interesting statement, considering it is a well-known fact that even today many birds are said to fly north during winter. Perhaps they are flying to this northern no man's land of Lintu Kotolinen described by the ancient Finnish. I personally think these no man's lands, or Lintu Kotolinen, are the Arctic boundary mountains surrounding the central domain. And Pohjola was, or is, most likely one of the first villages within this central domain. With so much detail, you can see why the Finnish cosmic mythology is certainly one of my favorites. So, now we've briefly explored Vedic Indian scriptures, the Bible, Greek, Chinese, Japanese, Celtic, Norse, and Finnish mythology. And I'm sure you can see the very obvious similarities in all their creation stories and descriptions of our universe. Is this a coincidence? Perhaps. For now, let's continue. Next, let's get out of Europe and head to the Middle East, ancient Persia in particular. In ancient Persia, they had a religion known as Zoroastrianism, also known as Mazda Yajna. This is said to be one of the oldest religions in the known world, originating in the Iranian-Persian region about 3,000 years ago, and is still practiced in that region today. Zoroastrianism is also said to have been the dominant religion in parts of India, Persia, and most of the Middle Eastern regions prior to the birth of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, so a very old religion. The most important teachings of this religion are found in scriptures known as the Avestas. According to these texts, in the beginning, Ormazd, or Mazda, the creator, dwelt on high in pure light, and Arman, or Angra, the destroyer, dwelt in the depths of darkness. This is similar, again, to the yin and yang principle of China, or the dualistic principles of God and devil found in most modern monotheistic religions. Anyway, between these two gods was the void. The two opposing gods then battled for control of the universe, eventually resulting in a truce that led to co-creation between them. This cosmic creation saga unfolded in 7 stages. First was the creation of the skies, via Rhea, which are said to have enclosed the world like the shell of an egg. The second creation was water, Hawar Vatat, which filled the lower half of the egg. The third creation was the earth, Arma-iti, shaped like a disc floating on the primeval waters. And on the earth stood the fourth, fifth, and sixth creations, all things that dwell upon, above, and within the earth. And finally, the seventh creation was fire or spirit, Arda Wahist, which gave life to all of God's creations. All of this was said to be protected by the great tree of life at the center, once again. And this tree of life was said to have been protected by Umardad, the first man, who was made in Mazda, or God's very own image. You can clearly see how the Bible and Quran mirror the Zoroastrian Avestas. Still in the Middle East, we move to Syria, a very hot topic at the moment. The ancient Assyrians were very closely related to the Zoroastrians. In their mythology, it was a fish which pushed ashore from the river Euphrates an egg containing their goddess Atargatis, and from it she was hatched. Atargatis was considered the divine feminine great mother and fertility goddess of the three worlds being the heavens, the earth, and the waters below. Much like all the other mythologies, the Assyrians believed life began at the center of the world, where the tree of life is located. Of course, the story is much broader, but for the sake of time, I will move on. What about the ancient Americas? What did they have to say about the creation and construct of our universe? Let's start in North America with the Zuni Tribe. The Zuni Tribe are peoples native to the Zuni River Valley of North America, in what used to be Apache native land, and what is today the state of New Mexico in the United States. According to the Zuni creation myth, in the beginning was nothing but the great space of the ages, complete void of darkness and emptiness. And in this void, only God, Awa Nawalona, existed in peace. One day, Awa Nawalona, through thought alone, contained himself in the form of a sun. And within the sun form, he came to be the brightness that lit the dark void. Awa Nawalona then formed the seed that created the two worlds of our universe, heaven and earth. The earth was Awi Telen Tsita, or, and I quote, the four-wombed Mother Earth. And the heavens became Apoyan Tachu, and I quote, the all-covering Father Sky. Now, the four wombs of Mother Earth, I think, are referencing the four districts or toroidal realms of our vast Earth, like I've shown on my model. Anyway, together, heaven and earth, with the help of the life-giving waters, created terrestrial life on the earth. According to the Zuni, people began a long time ago in the fourth world near the center of the earth. They believed that this fourth world of our earth is hidden underground. So once again, you can see how the Zuni might interpret a valley or crater continent as being underground. According to the Zuni, all terrestrial life began in this fourth world at the center or middle area of our earth. And over time, everything began moving outwards to the outer worlds or wombs of Mother Earth. This migration from the center outwards is said to have happened with the help from the deity gods and priests of that time. These priests learned the ability to create prayer sticks from magical wood that grew in this fourth world. They used these prayer sticks to climb out from the fourth world up into the third, second, and first. This will all make more sense in the latter part of my presentation when I explain how epochs work. Let's move on for now. To this day, the Zuni described the great Mother Earth as having four wombs or worlds, with an additional fifth sacred womb, the daylight world, in the center. They also still call their original homeland Holana Idiwana, or middle place. Of course, there are other Native American tribes with similar narratives, like the Coahuila of California and the Omaha of Nebraska, for instance. But my personal favorite Native American description of our universe is from a tribe further down in South America, the Kogi Native Indian tribe. The Kogi, or Kugui, or Kagaba, meaning jaguar in the Kogi language, are an indigenous ethnic group that still lives in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta region of Colombia. Their civilization has survived and thrived since before the pre-Columbian era. The central figure in their logo religion is the universal mother goddess. This supreme mother goddess is also known as Aluna, creator of all that is. According to the Kogi, in the beginning there was only blackness, only the sea. There was no sun, no moon, no people, no animals, no plants, only the sea. The sea was the mother. She was everything and nothing. She was infinite potential. The Kogi also believe that Aluna, the Great Mother, is the mind of the universe and all consciousness. She is the past, the present, and the future. Her intelligence is said to be concentrated through thought and memory, which forms a bridge between the human spirit and the universe. Aluna, the mother goddess's first creation, is said to have been the egg of life. And this cosmic egg was conceived as a divine uterus, also known as the womb of the universal Great Mother. And from this womb and egg, all things that exist in the whole universe were created and continue to exist. Now, according to the Kogi, our egg-shaped universe has 9 layered realms within it, and mankind occupies the middle realm of the 9, leaving 4 realms above and 4 below. The 4 upper layers are called the Ngui Lalang, or the 4 worlds of the suns. The Kogi believe that everything in the universe is connected, a never-ending reflection of itself. We might call this a microcosm of the macrocosm in modern scientific terms. This concept is demonstrated with how they build their ceremonial houses. They build their sacred houses in the center of their villages. Each house is circular and has 4 circular stepped wooden shelves on the inside, finished with a domed conical roof to reflect the shape of our universal cosmic egg. Inside this circular concentric stepped building, in the very middle, center, is said to be the most important and holy place. This is where the ceremonial priests address the gods from. To this day, the Kogi believe that the center of our world is a sacred place of perfect balance, known as Anun. This is where life began, and the gods still reside to this day, according to the Kogi. And like many other indigenous tribes, the Kogi people also honor a holy mountain which they call Gono Duandua, also known as Pico Cristobal Colon. They believe that this mountain is, and I quote, the heart of the universe. Now, as you can see, the Kogi are very clear in their description and depiction of the universe. But what I like most about the Kogi is the fact that their mythology is not an ancient one, but still lives to this day. So now we've been to ancient Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. And as you can see, all these ancient cultures are singing from the same verse when describing the creation and construct of our universe. At this point, I'd be very surprised if anyone still reading, listening, or watching this still thinks all of this is a random coincidence. Remember, there is no smoke without fire. Now, of course, having been incarnated in Africa in this time round, naturally I was keen to learn what, if any, African tribes, past and present, had to say about the creation and construct of our universe. I will start with the famous ancient Kemetic Egyptians, of course. The ancient Egyptians had a few different versions of a similar creation story, mainly divided by 3 religions: the Hermopolitan, the Heliopolitan, and the Mephite theologies. Despite a few differences, all 3 told a very similar creation story, often centered around the 8 Ogdoad gods. The Ogdoad were the celestial rulers of the cosmos, said to have been born out of a cosmic egg. And the cosmic egg itself was said to have been laid by a celestial goose called Gengenwer, sometimes referred to as an Ibis bird, or god known as Thoth. Now, not only was Thoth responsible for creating the cosmic egg, but he was also responsible for creating sound, hieroglyphs, language, writing, and all that is associated with wisdom. Another version of the ancient Egyptian creation story is one centered around the deity Atum. This version describes how our universe evolved from the body of the god Atum, who existed in a primordial sea of nothingness. Through thought, or Thoth, Atum united his own feminine energy and manifested Shu, god of the air, and Tefnut, goddess of water. Shu and Tefnut then united to create earth and sky, known as Geb and Nut. Geb and Nut then united, creating the 8 Ogdoad gods. These gods in turn created or gave birth to everything else in our universe. Another one of my favorites is a modern tribe of people in Africa, closely related to the ancient Egyptians, the Dogons. The Dogon people are an indigenous tribe who occupy a region in Mali, south of the Sahara Desert, in a place called Homburi Mountains, near Timbuktu, deep in West Africa. Today, there are about 100,000 members in this tribe. They have isolated themselves topographically and culturally from the outside world for countless centuries. And so, like the Kogi of South America, the Dogons of Africa have kept most of their culture and traditions intact. Their mythology still lives and thrives today. The Dogon are said to be direct descendants of the ancient Great Egyptian Empire. In fact, Dogon cosmology is said to be the exact cosmology of the ancient Egyptian Kemetic Anu priesthood. According to the Dogon, the universe started with Amma, the creator. Amma is the Dogon name for Amen, or Amun-Ra in Egyptian mythos. She is described as the intelligent consciousness behind all of creation and the awareness within all beings. Amma is often described as she who rests upon nothing. To the Dogon, the universe is considered Amma's egg. The story goes on to describe how, in the beginning, Amma was alone, and one day she divided herself into 4 parts: earth, air, fire, and water. She then created Ogo, her first creation, who was in the form of an amphibious serpent, also known as Apep in ancient Kemetic Egypt. Serpent, of course, symbolizing energy, as we discussed earlier. Ogo then helped Amma create the universe. However, Ogo soon revolted against Amma, and the ensuing struggle between the two is what created the dualistic nature of our existence. Again, we see that yin and yang concept. Amma then placed 7 words into the universal seed of life known as the paw. The number 7 once again. The paw began to vibrate strongly from within. The spiraling vibrations caused 4 clavicles to grow forth from within the center, and from this center all that exists in our universe sprouted from. To this day, the Dogon still believe that their place of origin is the Sirius star system directly below the North Pole. So even though the Dogon don't mention a tree at the center, they do describe life as having sprouted from a seed at the center. And seeds, of course, create trees. So again, we are seeing that tree, North Pole, and center Earth connection. Not forgetting, of course, that sacred number 7. 7 days of creation in the Bible, 7 stages of creation in the Avestas, 7 serpent coils in the Greek Orphic egg, 7 days of the week, 7 wandering stars, and now the 7 words that created life in Dogon cosmology. I think at this point we are past asking if all of this is coincidence. So let's move on. Still in Africa, I'll finish this segment with various tribes of West Africa who share a similar creation story, particularly the Fon people of Benin, the Akan of Ghana, the Iwe people of Togo, and the Igbo and Yoruba of Nigeria. These tribes have a similar creation story with slight variations. Their creation story explains how Before the beginning of everything, there was only Asher, the creative force itself. Asher, alone and peaceful, one day began to think. And when thinking began, Asher created the first god, Olodumare. Using only thought, Olodumare then created his first creation, Olorun, the heavens, and soon after followed by Olofi, the earth. Olorun and Olofi are said to have lived in the Adobe, or universe, at the center of everything. Together, Olorun and Olofi, heaven and earth, combined their thoughts to create the goddess Nana, the grandmother of all living divinities. Nana herself begins to think. Her first thought gives birth to Mawa, the giant cosmic egg that sat in the stillness of the Adobe, or universe. A second thought created Lisa, consciousness or spirit, the seed of life which fertilizes the egg from within the center. Now these three gods, Nana, Mawa, and Lisa, are referred to as the first great divinities of our universe. Together, these three first created Oshumare, the rainbow serpent, who is responsible for binding and keeping Mawa, the cosmic egg, together by coiling himself around it. Now, it's also interesting that the Faun people of Benin believe that this serpent, Oshumare, coils around the world and binds it so it does not fall apart, with 3,500 coils above and 3,500 coils below. Very specific, which is interesting to say the least. I've not yet figured out the exact significance of these figures, but it's interesting to note that 3,500 by 2 is 7,000. That 7 yet again. Anyway, I'll let you decide for yourself what to make of all of this. And finally, even in modern science and cosmology, this cosmic egg concept is also featured. In 1927, a Swiss astrologer and physicist by the name of Georges Lemaitre proposed that the cosmos originated from what he called the primeval atom, or cosmic egg. Lemaitre described the universe as exploding from a cosmic egg, which was like a giant atom with all the mass of the universe. His idea was that all the galaxies and stars in our universe formed and expanded outwards from that initial state at the center of the cosmic egg. Lemaitre hypothesized that the universe started from a fluctuation of his first quantum of energy, his or him being God, according to Lemaitre. He then went on to say that God's cosmic egg, through quantum energy, created and defined modern space, time, and matter. Now, as you can see, going as far back into human history and even in fairly modern science across various cultures and timelines, the cosmic egg narrative seems to have a significant and profound association with the beginning of life and construct of our universe. We continually see this recurring narrative of a cosmic egg being associated with primal conditions, or a void, emptiness, or stillness, then creation by some divine being or energy, with a serpent or bird god involved in some way. We also see seeds or trees of life at the center of everything, and of course all of this being created or existing within some sort of primordial cosmic egg. And within that primordial egg, a flat earth below and a sky above, usually with the earth sitting on the waters. Many of these stories have a recurring theme of 4 or 5 different worlds on our earth, and a central pillar in the middle of this earth, usually in the form of a sacred tree or mountain surrounded by 4 islands, or a hidden world somewhere in the North Polar region. Not forgetting, of course, this constant mention of 7. But most significantly, all of these cultures, without any doubt, say they originated somewhere in the north or center of the earth. I'm sorry, but there is no smoke without fire. Now, With this much overwhelming evidence, I found it extremely strange when a so-called celebrated scholar, Professor Brian Cox, recently made this bizarre claim.
There is absolutely no basis at all for thinking the world is flat. Nobody in human history, as far as I know, has thought the world was flat.
With that in mind, I will end the segment with another great quote made by a famous educator and author, Alvin Toffler, who in his book The Futurist said, and I quote, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but instead those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Close quote. I'm afraid I have to agree with Mr. Toffler. Perhaps for humanity to evolve to the next stage of human consciousness, intelligence, and growth, we must be prepared to continually learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now, if any of this information is new to you, please go off and research. I don't expect you to blindly take my word for it. Research for yourself to verify or disprove what I'm sharing with you. Question what I'm sharing with you. Then, make up your own minds. Now, in the next part of my presentation, I won't go into the full details of my model and theory, just a brief overview. For a more in-depth presentation, I'd recommend visiting my YouTube channel, Flat Earth Universe. Of course, my model is based on the idea that our entire universe is contained within something, what many ancient cultures called the cosmic egg, as we've already covered. In modern terms, this cosmic egg is what we'd call an electromagnetic torus field. Even modern science alludes to this idea, what NASA calls cosmic background microwave radiation, or Van Allen belts. I then hypothesize that our Earth is geocentric, flat and motionless, and of course extremely vast and extensive. This vast earthly plane is located at the heart of our universe, running diametrically across the center. And straight down, top to bottom, through the middle of our universe is what's known as the axis mundi, or cosmic vortex, also known in many cultures as the Merudanda, or Mount Meru in Vedic scriptures, the Bifrost Bridge in Norse mythology, or the Tree of Life in the Quran, Bible, Celtic, African, Persian, and many other world scriptures and mythologies. My research then divides this vast earthly plane into 4 circular concentric rings, each ring encompassed within its own spherical electromagnetic torus field, much like the 4 inner layers of an egg in the natural world, with the outer torus field being the shell that holds our entire universe together. We can actually physically see 2 of these energy fields in our realm: the Aurora Borealis at the inner northern region of our Earth, surrounding the central realm, and the Aurora Australis on the outer perimeters of our realm, around the Antarctic Circle. Each of these rings of lands are separated by various geographic elements, various mountains, oceans, and energy fields. Of course, many will be familiar with the Antarctic ice wall on the outer southern perimeter of our domain. And I believe there is also an Arctic wall around the inner central region of our domain. Naturally, all these different realms beyond these various barriers are most likely different dimensions, oscillating at different frequencies with their own weather, eco, and solar systems, their own suns and moons, Saturn and Jupiter on the outermost realm, Mars and Venus within the next realm, our sun Apollo and moon Artemis within our realm, and Mercury at the center being the exception, androgynous, both a sun and moon. There is a lot of mythology and confusion around this inner central sun of Mercury, what I believe is sometimes referred to as Planet X, Nibiru, or the Black Sun. We will further explore this inner sun later in my presentation. My research also suggests that this central realm is currently an indrawn four-island continent hidden under the fog and clouds of the North Polar region. This is what is sometimes referred to as inner Earth. This inner central realm of Earth is described in many scriptures, religions, and mythologies as the cradle of humanity and life as we know it, as we saw in the mythology section of my presentation. This place is also known as the Garden of Eden in the Bible and Quran, Bata Vasha or Shambhala in Vedic scriptures, Arcadia in Egyptian mythology, Hyperborea in Greek mythology, Midgard or Middle Garden in Norse mythology, and so on and so on. Naturally, the laws of symmetry would dictate that as above, so below, which is why I hypothesize that the underside of our Earth is also a concentric circular pyramid. This underside is what we sometimes refer to as hollow Earth. Now, this entire Earth, top and bottom, sits on the waters of the Great Deep or Gabadoka Ocean, as it's known by the Vedics. Most interestingly, I couldn't help noticing how the Earth on this model looks like a giant ship floating on waters. This makes me wonder if perhaps this is where the concept of admiralty or maritime law is derived from. Perhaps early linguists and lawmakers knew our Earth is a giant ship floating in the cosmic waters of our electromagnetic universe. Yes, I am saying the Earth we live on is like a giant ship. And this earthly ship has many citizens. We are all citizens of this mothership we call Mother Earth. Of course, like any large ship, there are many different ports to pass through. And like any large ship, there are many captains and craftsmen to help keep everything ship shape. However, there are also many kings who rule over the various domes or domains on this ship, which is where kingdoms and kingship comes from. And of course, every large ship needs dockmasters or doctors to deliver and certify any incoming seamen or seamen being berthed onto this mothership. Now, I could go on and on to show the clear parallels between maritime law, language, and my model. I promise you, you will not find, read, or learn this from any school or book. This is hidden, occulted knowledge I'm sharing with you. Anyway, let's move on. Now, I also couldn't help noticing the incredible number of pyramid structures in this realm of Earth. Almost every single ancient culture from Africa to Asia, the Americas, and even Europe built or depicted pyramids of some kind. Triangular pyramids, square pyramids, and even circular pyramids. Pyramids everywhere. Interestingly, you'll also notice that on my model, the Earth is also a circular pyramid. I strongly believe that the ancient cultures that built these ancient pyramid structures understood and knew the true construct of our Earth and universe. It's also interesting to note how our circular concentric pyramid Earth also looks like a giant tree stump sitting in water, with the underside being the roots of the tree. Is it coincidence that our terra firma Earth is often also described as being connected to a tree or giant rock of some sort? Also, many of you will be familiar with the concept that all mountains today are simply petrified wood that used to be giant trees. Which then begs the question, is the Earth we are living on a huge mountain or ancient tree stump that was once an actual physical megalithic cosmic tree, with its trunk being at the center, the axis, now Mount Meru? Obviously, I can't say with 100% certainty that this is the case, But as you can see, the evidence is quite compelling. Now, above the Earth, of course, is the firmament, or sky, with all the observable star systems, constellations, and various other heavenly bodies rotating above us like a giant clock, with Polaris as the central pin, or dial. Naturally, many of us now know that these heavenly places are not accessible to us in this physical mortal state. One would need to be a spirit, an angel, an angle of light, or a star to traverse these heavenly realms. We will further explore this concept later in this presentation. For now, it's also worth noting that many scriptures and mythologies say we are not the only cosmic egg or Taurus universe. There are apparently many other cosmic egg universes in the multiverse, which also makes sense to me. I think it would be naive and arrogant to limit creation. Why limit creation? Why limit space and time? Why limit anything? After all, if energy, space and time are limitless, why should matter be limited? Well, again, that's just my opinion and perspective. Another question I often get asked is, why a circular Earth? Why spherical torus fields? Why circles and spheres? Well, mainly because that is what nature dictates. All natural physiological structures and constructs in our everyday observable world are made up of curved, circular, and spherical shapes, verified by various observable and scientific mathematics like the Fibonacci sequence, pi ratio, helix, and vortex mathematics. So why? Why should Mother Nature herself, Mother Earth, be any different? However, that's not to say other shapes do not have a place or significance within our construct and reality. Tesseracts, hypercubes, decastructures, and many other complex angled structures are all integral elements of both our physical and metaphysical world. Many scientists and mystics hypothesize that whilst our natural physical world is predominantly curved and circular in nature, our metaphysical world is predominantly angled structures. Perhaps this is where a concept like angels comes from. Perhaps an angel is simply a conscious, higher dimensional, angled being of light, a soul, spirit, or star. It is mine and many others' belief that one would need to be an angel or conscious angle of light, a Merkaba star, to access these heavenly, higher dimensional spiritual realms. Many ancient cultures called this the Merkaba star structure, or Merkaba. Now, of course, numbers also play a significant role in our reality. Mathematics and numbers are encoded in our physical and metaphysical world. Much like nature, numbers never lie. In fact, numbers and nature have a symbiotic relationship. Numbers are the fiber that connects the mental and physical aspect of our reality. For instance, 0 and 1 are often associated with wholeness or being complete, divine unity. 2 often represents division, duality, or balance of the physical and metaphysical. 3 is associated with the metaphysical or spiritual aspect of our reality, as seen with the Holy Trinity symbology across many cultures and religions. 4 predominantly represents physical form of reality, as I demonstrated in my Fantastic Four presentation. And of course this continues with all the other numbers, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But again, that's a whole different presentation. At this point, I suppose the elephant in the room is the question: are we alone on our vast earthly plane? Well, as far as I'm concerned, the answer is absolutely not. We are not alone. Once again, why limit creation? Why limit the infinite potential of existence to just us in this realm or domain of Earth? Of course, those of you who are familiar with this model will now know that extraterrestrials on this model means exactly what it sounds like. Extra meaning more of, and terrestrial coming from the root word terrain or land or earth. So yes, I do believe that there are extraterrestrial lands and extraterrestrial beings in other domains of our earth. There is certainly a plethora of evidence strongly suggesting extraterrestrial activity in this realm, past and present, from mythologies, folklore, scriptures, ancient stone carvings, texts, recent testimonies and accounts, and even sightings. And even by many who claim to have visited some of these extraterrestrial worlds in fairly recent times. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the 18th century Norse explorer Olaf Jansen and the famous Vice Admiral Richard E. Byrd, amongst others. Those of you who are not familiar with these explorers are probably wondering what they had to say about their extraterrestrial discoveries. Well, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. The following is a recording made by Vice Admiral Richard E. Byrd in 1954 on a broadcast called the Longines Chronoscope.
Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. An area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being.
I'm sure there's no need for me to elaborate. The Vice Admiral was very clear about what he discovered and where it's located. So let's move on. Many of you will also be familiar with archaeologists and anthropologists like Eric van Daniken, Graham Hancock, Giorgio Tsoukalos, David Wilcox, and Michael Tellinger, amongst others, whom have all spent a large part of their lives researching and investigating extraterrestrial activity in our realm, past and present. Although most of these researchers currently still subscribe to the heliocentric Earth model, ironically, I think their research and theories make way more sense on this geocentric cosmic egg model. Anyway, given the overwhelming evidence, it is certainly my understanding that these extraterrestrial domains, lands, realms, and dimensions are inhabited by many extraterrestrial beings, civilizations, cultures, and races, all with varying degrees of conscious and/or technological advancements, dependent on various cosmological factors like cosmic cycles, seasons, and ages, all of which I will further elaborate on in the final segment of my presentation. At this point, I want to make it very clear that there is a distinct difference between extraterrestrials and aliens. Whilst I subscribe to the notion that there are definitely various races of extraterrestrial beings, I do not subscribe to the idea of aliens, certainly not in the form portrayed to us in modern popular culture. As far as I'm concerned, extraterrestrial beings are humanoid and closely related to us human beings. I'm sure you're all familiar with the various historical and mythological names that have been used to describe some of these extraterrestrial beings and civilizations, past and present. Races of beings such as the Polarians, the Hyperboreans, the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, the Aryans, Reptilians, Pleiadians, Arcturians, etc., etc. Now, I would argue that most, if not all these races are not just mythological, but actually currently existing races of beings and civilizations across the plane of our vast geocentric universal Earth. However, aliens, on the other hand, particularly as they are portrayed to us in popular culture, are most likely inorganic, artificial, or genetically engineered constructs. I think distinguishing between the two is extremely important, more so in the near future when disclosure happens as I will further explain in the final segment of my presentation. For now, let's stay on track. Now, it's also worth mentioning that all of this is obviously not random. There is most definitely structure and order to our universe. Natural biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, and cosmology are all too finely balanced to just be random. Everything in existence is divinely created and structured. Now, obviously, for universal order to exist, then logically there has to be universal laws that govern this order. These are what are known as the 12 universal laws. The law of oneness, the law of vibration, the law of action, the law of correspondence, the law of cause and effect, the law of compensation, the law of attraction, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, the law of relativity, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, and the law of gender. These universal laws are also sometimes referred to as spiritual laws, as their governance transcends both the physical and metaphysical. Everything in our entire universe, top to bottom, is governed by these spiritual universal laws, regardless of whether we're aware of them or not. Below universal laws, we have what's known as natural laws. Natural laws predominantly govern the physical world, the natural order of things on our entire vast earthly plane. Every earthly realm, domain, and dimension abide by and are equally affected by the same universal natural physical laws. Of course, both universal and natural laws are unbiased and totally fair. They work for or against everyone and everything, regardless of whether we're aware of them or not. Just like the sun shines on everything and everyone equally the same, good and bad. Many wise esoteric researchers, mystics, teachers, and writings tell us that understanding and living within these universal and natural laws creates balance and harmony, whereas ignorance or perversion of these laws does the exact opposite. Now, of course, we all know there are many other laws as well. Below universal and natural laws, we have common laws. Common laws are uniquely subject to each individual earthly realm or domain, meaning each one of these 4 realms, domains, or districts, if you like, individually agree upon their own laws, determined by the things they have in common amongst themselves, hence the term common laws. And so, since common laws are created by the dominions or beings of each domain, they are also known as man-made laws. Of course, in this realm, these man-made or legal laws trickle further down to government laws, then state, district, council, all the way down to your local municipality laws, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, many of us are not aware of spiritual, universal, natural, and sometimes even common laws. In this domain, we are all ignorantly restricted to man-made laws, and this is no doubt by design. Those in positions of power are in those positions because they understand these fundamental concepts. Remember, knowledge is power. However, having said that, there is a time and place for everything, a reason and season for everything. Which brings me to my last, and I think most important part of my presentation, the who, how, and why of all of this. Now, I'd like to open this last section of my presentation with a couple of quotes. One biblical and the other a prophetic quote made by the Hopi native Indians of North America. Biblical quote is from the book of Ecclesiastes 1:9-10. And I quote, "All things continue the way they have been since the beginning. What has happened will happen again. There is nothing new here on earth." And the native Hopi prophecy says, and I quote, "When the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come unto the earth. This new tribe will be of many colors, creeds, and classes, and their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow." Close quote. Now, these two quotes are not unique. Many ancient cultures, mystics, scriptures, and mythologies describe human evolution and time not just as a physical process, but more importantly, a conscious, cyclical process. Everything always goes full circle. That includes time, energy, seasons, and even all conscious life. Like I said earlier, and as you can see on my model, there are different realms, domains, civilizations, races, cultures on our entire earthly plane and within our universe, all experiencing this circle and cycle of life. Naturally, there is a process as to how all this expansive variety of existence came about and continues to be. And this is what I'm going to attempt to show and explain to you in this last part of my presentation.